Let's talk about Starfield and procedurally generated worlds. There's a bit of a fuss being kicked up about this right now, a lot of bland panicking, which is typical of the Elder Scrolls community because they are a bit like children with these things. And yes, I said that. I'm a straight shooter. If they behave that way, I'm going to call it as I see it. In this particular case, though, it's a simple case of not understanding the difference between how No Man's Sky uses procedurally generated world and how Bethesda use them, because there is a difference. And that's what this video is about. Now, if you ever played Elite, the original Elite or Elite Frontier in the early games, that was when procedurally generated worlds were quite common. And it allows you to build entire universes in 3.5K memory or a bit more memory than that, right? Now we've got gigabytes of memory, but back then we had very little. One JPEG today would fill the memory back then. So one picture downloaded from the internet, that would be more than those computers could handle, but they generated entire galaxies on those computers using procedural generation. Now, they stopped using procedural generation at one point, and it all became pre-made, and it got a bit boring and stale because everybody knew where everything was. It was never different, right? And the whole idea was lost, but it's back again now with games like No Man's Sky. So again, we've got huge galaxies to explore, generated as we fly there. So even the developers don't know the worlds we're going to be visiting, right? And it requires a certain amount of random code. And as we've seen, the developers of No Man's Sky have slowly improved it. Now, when I was modding Oblivion, I made a Black Marsh world. And I'm going to explain to you now the way Bethesda make their worlds. They're procedurally generated worlds. Because Oblivion, that's Cyrodiil, that was procedurally generated. Skyrim, that was procedurally generated. The Capital Wasteland, that was procedurally generated. But you may have noticed it wasn't the size of a planet. That's because they went back and edited it later to add things like cities, like the Imperial City and things like that. All they do is they create the world procedurally, and then they go back and they edit it. So they've made it in the office, so to speak, saved it off in the office, edited it in the office, and then given you the edited version. So you see what I did with Black Marsh. I took Leywin, I thought, yeah, this is a good basis for Black Marsh. Made some changes, added a lot more vegetation, a lot more sound and wildlife. And then I just went, generate. And I generated what was a fantastic marshland, full of rich life and trees, really dense. And the idea was I'm just going to cut holes through the marsh that people could walk through and put bridges across any waters and stuff like that. But it exceeded the object count the game could handle at the time, so it crashed out every time I loaded it. But the procedurally generated world I made was fantastic. It was absolutely epic. It looks the part, right? And Bethesda make all their games that way. Now, what I was going to do was I was going to generate the world so it was dense trees and marshland, right? Removing anything that was obviously wrong. Put paths through it, put little huts raised above, the marshes, with wooden bridges going across any rivers and stuff or any watery areas. So the hut, everything, looked like it was sinking into the marsh. Like if there was any castles there, it would have sunk into the marsh at an angle. That kind of thing. And it would look fantastic. It would look fantastic. I would have had to put the castles in myself, so I would have to clear the area, put the castle in at the angle, redecorate that area, just the terrain, right? But that's what Bethesda do. That's how they take their procedurally generated worlds and improve them. They do that. So you can see there's a difference between randomly generating a world on the fly and generating it in the studio, saving it off and adding it to the game. Still done the same way, but the results are very different. Now, how do I know Bethesda have done it the same old way they always done and not the No Man's Sky? Simple, right? Their galaxy is only 1,000 worlds and 100 systems. No Man's Sky is an infinite galaxy with infinite worlds. That's how I know. And it's been quite a feat to generate 100 worlds and then, save them all off. Because they'd have had to edit every single one of them. And this is the question. 100 worlds, right? How much editing have they done? And does it matter? I would say no. because every modder on the planet's going to be modding one of them worlds now. They're going to be adding their own bases to it, their own factions, everything. And I, for one, plan to do tutorials and things like that to help them do it. Because I'm an expert on factions in Bethesda's games. I do it all the time, and I've got better and better at it. And some of these videos you see me make that seem to have low interest counts, like the AI ones, they're partly there for other people. That's an introduction, really, to say this is what's possible. So, yeah, I'd expect these barren rocks to be more common than populated worlds, like life on them, because that's realistic. I just hope that the space in between the worlds is populated by something interesting as well, because Freelancer nailed it. It made the world really interesting. You had open areas where just darkness, but then you had areas with nebula and asteroids, and sometimes a mix of the two, and it was fantastic. It was great flying through those things. So I'm hoping it's more like that. Anyway, the procedurally generated world is nothing to worry about because Bethesda have been doing this for years, and we usually enjoy the result. Just remember, right, there won't be any trees on barren rocks to float above the ground, so they would have solved that problem. Instead, they would be going for atmosphere, as in how a planet looks. And from what I've seen so far, they're nailing it. They're making it look interesting. But with it being space and with planets being mostly barren rocks, there will be a certain amount of we've seen this rock before, right? Just have trusted modders out there to make those rocks individual and interesting. And I'm not on about ones that stick grass and trees on every single planet, because quite frankly, I won't be using any of those, right? So it's ones that put bases on them, ports on them, mines on them, their own cities on them, these things, right? Because this is the things we can do. I will probably build a city of my own on one of them and use that as a basis for all my mods so I don't interfere with Bethesda's. So the best is yet to come, right? We've got worlds to build on. And quite frankly, as long as Bethesda don't go the No Man's Sky route, and I don't think they have, because like I said, their galaxy will be bigger than 100 systems. If they had done, it'd be millions. So I'm pretty convinced that they've gone the old school route and designed it in-house and then just saved the whales off for us to edit, right? But if they had gone the No Man's Sky route, it'd be that much difficult to mod because the whales wouldn't even exist until you flew there in the game. And that would make modding impossible, and that is not what Bethesda do with their games. Their design choices would include ways of modding the games, and to think anything else would be to think Bethesda are making games in a way they don't ever make games. So Bethesda are known to make things in a certain way, and all the signs are they've done it again here. So this is Skyrim, this is Cyrodiil, this is Morrowind. Don't worry about it. It looks normal for Bethesda in my opinion, and I'm an expert modder of Bethesda's games, so I'm not a betting man, but I would put money down that it's done the old school way. Even if they do look like barren rocks when we get there, they won't be randomly generated in the game. They'll be just pre-made and saved. I'm pretty sure of that. And that means the door's open for some fantastic mods. See you later.